My best friend's voicemail to the wrong number said, "The plan is working." The voicemail wasn't meant for me. I should have realized it the moment Emma's voice came through my phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, breathless and excited in a way that made my stomach clench. Emma never called me past 10 p.m. She was religious about her skincare routine and beauty sleep. But there I was, sitting in my Honda Civic outside the CVS on Maple Street, listening to my best friend of 8 years say words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. Jen, oh my god, it's actually working. The plan is working better than we thought. I almost deleted it right there. Emma always got our names mixed up when she was excited. Me and her sister Jennifer sounded similar enough when you're rushing. But something in her tone made me keep listening, made me turn up the volume even though my hands were already shaking. Marcus came over again tonight. Third time this week. He's so confused about Sarah's behavior, and I just keep validating his concerns, you know? I told him that thing about how she checks his phone, which obviously she doesn't, but he doesn't know that. And the stuff about her getting jealous when he hangs out with his friends? He totally bought it. The parking lot started spinning. I gripped my steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. He actually said, and I quote, "I don't know if Sarah is the person I thought she was." Can you believe it? 2 years together and he's doubting everything because of a few conversations with me. Men are so easy to manipulate when you just listen to them and agree with everything they say. Emma's laugh. That same laugh I'd heard 1,000 times when she told me about her disastrous Tinder dates, or when we binged Netflix shows until 3 a.m., or when she helped me pick out the dress I wore on my first date with Marcus. That laugh was celebrating the destruction of my relationship. The best part is Sarah has no idea. She actually thanked me yesterday for being such a good friend and listening to her relationship concerns. If she only knew I was taking notes to report back to Marcus later. She told me she's been feeling insecure about how distant he's been lately, and I was like, "Oh honey, maybe you should give him some space." Meanwhile, I'm literally the reason he's being distant. I hit pause. My reflection stared back at me from the dark CVS window, 28 years old, still in my work clothes from my marketing job at Henderson and Associates, looking like someone had just told me the sun was actually the moon. Everything that had felt wrong for the past 3 months suddenly clicked into place like puzzle pieces I'd been trying to force into the wrong spots. Marcus pulling away after our movie nights. His weird questions about whether I really trusted him. The way he'd gotten quiet when I mentioned wanting to meet his new coworkers. How he'd started saying things like, "Emma thinks maybe you're stressed about us moving too fast," when we'd never even discussed moving in together. Emma had been there for every conversation. Every doubt I'd shared about why Marcus seemed different. Every moment I'd wondered if I was losing my mind, if I was imagining the distance between us. I pressed play again. I give it 2 weeks, maybe 3. He's almost ready to pull the trigger. And the beautiful thing? Sarah will come running to me when he breaks up with her, and I'll be the perfect supportive best friend helping her through her heartbreak. The voicemail ended. I sat in that parking lot for 27 minutes, watching the timestamp on my phone and trying to remember how to breathe. The first thing I did was drive to Marcus's apartment. I know that sounds insane, who confronts their boyfriend at midnight after discovering their best friend has been systematically destroying their relationship, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I was operating on pure adrenaline and the desperate need to fix something, anything, before my entire world finished crumbling. Marcus lived in those new luxury apartments on 5th Street, the ones with the fancy key fobs and the doorman who always looked at my Honda like it was personally offending him. I'd been there hundreds of times, had a drawer in his dresser, knew he kept his spare coffee filters on top of the fridge. Normal girlfriend things that now felt like artifacts from someone else's life. I made it all the way to his door before I realized I had no idea what to say. "Hey Marcus, funny story, my best friend has been gaslighting both of us for months and I have a voicemail to prove it." Sounded unhinged even in my head. Especially at 12:31 a.m. on a Wednesday. So I stood there like an idiot, hand raised to knock, when I heard voices through the door. Emma's voice. I pressed my ear against the wood like some stalker in a Lifetime movie, my heart hammering so loud I was sure the neighbors could hear it through the walls. "Just think Sarah's been acting really possessive lately," Emma was saying. "Yesterday she asked me if I thought you were hiding something from her." It was kind of intense. I had asked her that. Tuesday afternoon, during our usual coffee run to Starbucks. But I'd asked because Marcus had been getting weird texts all week that made him smile in a way he never smiled at my messages. I'd been worried he was talking to someone else, not because I was possessive, but because my boyfriend of 2 years had suddenly started acting like a stranger. Now I knew why. Emma had been filling his head with poison for months. "That's exactly what I'm talking about," Marcus said, and his voice sounded tired in a way that made my chest ache. "She never used to be like this. Remember when we first started dating? She was so easygoing." "People change," Emma said, and I could practically hear her sympathetic head tilt through the door. "Sometimes not for the better. You can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed." I wanted to burst through that door and scream. Instead, I found myself backing away, step by step, until I was pressed against the hallway wall next to the ugly abstract painting Marcus always complained about. "I just don't know what to do," Marcus continued. "I love her, but this isn't the Sarah I fell for. She questions everything I do now. Last week she got upset because I didn't text her back for 3 hours. That was a lie. Last week he'd gone radio silent for an entire day, then claimed his phone died, even though he'd been active on Instagram the whole time. I'd seen him liking Emma's photos while supposedly being unreachable. Maybe you need to think about whether this relationship is making you happy," Emma said gently. "You deserve someone who trusts you." The manipulation was so smooth, so perfectly crafted, that I almost admired it. Emma had taken every normal relationship concern I'd shared with her, the kind of stuff everyone talks through with their friends, and weaponized it. She'd turned my vulnerability into ammunition and handed it directly to the person I was vulnerable about. But here's what really broke me, Marcus was buying it. This man who'd seen me at my worst, food poisoning, family drama, the Great Spider incident of 2023, was sitting in his apartment at almost 1 a.m., letting my best friend convince him I was some controlling monster. I walked back to my car and sat in the parking garage for another hour, staring at Emma's contact in my phone. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was scrolling through 3 months of text messages and seeing Emma's manipulation in high definition, like putting on glasses after walking around half blind. August 15th, 2:33 p.m. Marcus seems distant lately. Did I do something wrong? Emma, 2:47 p.m. Maybe give him some space? Sometimes guys need room to breathe. August 22nd, 11:18 a.m. He canceled our dinner plans again. Third time this month. Emma, 11:22 a.m. That's weird. Maybe he's stressed about work? Don't take it personally. September 4th, 6:45 p.m. Emma, I'm worried Marcus is losing interest. He barely talks to me anymore. Emma, 7:12 p.m. Have you considered that maybe you're being a little clingy? Like, remember how you used to be more independent? Every response designed to make me doubt myself. Every piece of advice crafted to push Marcus further away while making me feel crazy for noticing the distance she was creating. I called in sick to work Wednesday morning, first time in 2 years, and drove to Emma's apartment complex on Riverside Drive. I needed to see her face when I played that voicemail. I needed to watch her scramble for an explanation. Emma lived in one of those converted warehouse lofts that cost more than my monthly salary but looked like someone had decorated it exclusively with items from HomeGoods clearance. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, hair in a messy bun, looking like a perfect picture of my supportive best friend getting ready for another day of ruining my life. Sarah, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at work? She stepped aside to let me in, and I noticed her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. A text thread with Marcus was visible on the screen. I got your voicemail last night, I said, watching her face carefully. Oh good. I was wondering if you'd gotten it. I called so late. No hesitation, no guilt. Just Emma being Emma, except now I knew what Emma being Emma actually meant. Did you listen to the whole thing? I was telling you about that guy from Bumble, the one who... You called me Jen, I interrupted. At the beginning. You thought you were calling Jennifer. The slightest pause. A microscopic crack in her performance. Did I? God, I was so tired. You know how I get when I'm exhausted. The plan is working, Jen, I quoted. That's how you started the message. Emma's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. What? Marcus came over again tonight. Third time this week. I watched her face go pale. He's so confused about Sarah's behavior, and I just keep validating his concerns. The mug hit the counter harder than necessary, coffee sloshing over the rim. Sarah, I have no idea what you're talking about. Men are so easy to manipulate when you just listen to them and agree with everything they say. I pulled out my phone. Would you like me to play it for you? That doesn't sound like something I would ever. 2 years together and he's doubting everything because of a few conversations with me. Emma sank onto her couch, and for the first time in our 8-year friendship, she looked small. Caught. The confident, bubbly exterior cracked just enough for me to see something calculating underneath. How long? I asked. Sarah, how long have you been sabotaging my relationship? She was quiet for 37 seconds. I counted. Since the beginning, she finally whispered. Since your third date with him. The room tilted. Our third date was 2 years ago, Emma. I know. Why? Another pause. Longer this time. When she looked up, her eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if she was actually crying or just performing grief the same way she'd been performing friendship. Because he was supposed to be mine. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, bumping into Emma's ridiculous floating shelf that held her collection of succulents and motivational candles. What do you mean, supposed to be yours? Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand, suddenly looking younger than her 29 years. We matched on Bumble first. 3 weeks before you did. We talked for hours, Sarah. He was funny and sweet and everything I wanted. We had plans to meet up that Friday night at Rosario's, you know, that Italian place downtown where you had your first official date with him. My legs felt unsteady. I sat down hard on her accent chair, the one I'd helped her pick out at Target 6 months ago. Back when I thought we were actually friends. But then Thursday night, I got food poisoning from that sketchy sushi place on Grant Street. Remember? I was sick for 3 days. I had to cancel. Emma's voice was getting smaller, more childlike. When I finally felt better and texted him, he said he'd met someone else. Someone amazing. He was so sorry, but he wanted to see where this new thing went. Me, I whispered. You. The word came out like an accusation. My best friend. Who I'd told about this amazing guy I was talking to. Who I'd shown his photos to. Who knew I was excited about him. I tried to remember that conversation, but it was buried under 2 years of memories and the crushing weight of realizing my entire relationship had been built on a foundation of lies and resentment. Emma, I had no idea. Of course you didn't. She stood up abruptly, pacing to her kitchen window. Because you never asked. When you started gushing about this incredible guy you'd met on Bumble, Marcus Chin, 26, works in finance, loves hiking and obscure documentaries, you never once thought to check if he sounded familiar. The details hit me like individual slaps. She was right. I'd been so caught up in the excitement of meeting someone who actually seemed normal and interested that I'd rambled on about him for hours without really listening to whether Emma seemed off. So you decided to destroy my relationship instead of just talking to me about it? Emma laughed, but it was nothing like the laugh I'd heard on the voicemail. This one was bitter, sharp-edged. What was I supposed to say? Hey Sarah, that guy you're falling in love with was supposed to go out with me first? You would have told me I was being ridiculous. That it was just a coincidence. That these things happen. Because they do happen, Emma. People match with the same person online all the time. It doesn't mean what? She whirled around to face me. That I had a right to be hurt? That maybe, just maybe, my best friend should have cared enough to check before diving headfirst into a relationship with someone I was already talking to? I stared at her, trying to process the twisted logic. So you spent 2 years systematically lying to both of us instead? I spent 2 years waiting for him to see what I saw from the beginning. Emma's voice was getting stronger now, more defiant. That you weren't right for each other. That you were too controlling, too needy. That he deserved someone who actually understood him. Someone like you. Yes, someone like me. She crossed her arms. Someone who actually listened when he talked about his job instead of zoning out. Someone who remembered that he's allergic to shellfish and hates when people are late. Someone who didn't make him feel guilty for wanting to spend time with his friends. Emma, I never. You did, Sarah. Maybe not intentionally, but you did. I just helped Marcus see what was already there. The gaslighting was so complete, so thorough, that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost started questioning my own memories of the past 2 years, wondering if maybe I had been controlling, if maybe I hadn't been the girlfriend Marcus deserved. Then I remembered the voicemail. Her gleeful voice talking about lies she'd told, manipulation she'd orchestrated, plans she'd made to destroy what Marcus and I had built together. Show me your phone, I said quietly. What? Your text messages with Marcus. Show me your phone right now. Emma's face went white again. Sarah, that's crazy. I'm not going to. Show me, or I'm playing this voicemail for him tonight. Emma's hand moved protectively over her phone, which was still sitting on the kitchen counter next to her laptop. The text thread with Marcus was no longer visible on the screen. She'd closed it while we were talking. This is insane, Sarah. You can't just demand to go through my private messages. Watch me. I stood up and moved toward the counter, but Emma was faster. She grabbed the phone and clutched it against her chest like I was trying to steal her firstborn. Fine, I said, pulling out my own phone. Then I'm calling Marcus right now. Wait. The word came out strangled. Just, wait. Let me explain. I'm done with explanations. But I didn't hit call yet. Something in her voice made me pause. You have 30 seconds. Emma looked at her phone, then at me, then back at her phone. Her hands were shaking now, and I could see her mind racing through options, calculating which lie might work, what story might save her. The texts aren't, they're not what you think. What are they then? Promise me you won't call Marcus until you see them. Promise me you'll let me explain what you're looking at. I wanted to say no. Every instinct told me this was just another manipulation, another way for Emma to control the narrative. But I was curious now. What could possibly be worse than what I'd already discovered? Fine. Show me. Emma's fingers fumbled with her passcode. I noticed she'd changed it from her birthday, which I'd known for years, and pulled up her messages. She handed me the phone like she was handing me a loaded gun. The first thing I saw was the sheer volume of texts between her and Marcus. Pages and pages, going back months. Way more than I'd ever exchanged with him, and I was supposed to be his girlfriend. I scrolled to the top, to messages from 3 weeks ago. Marcus, September 18th, 10:47 p.m. Thanks for listening tonight. I don't know what I'd do without you. Emma, September 18th, 10:52 p.m. That's what friends are for. Sarah's lucky to have someone who cares about her as much as you do. Marcus, September 18th, 10:55 p.m. Sometimes I wonder if she sees it that way. I remembered September 18th. Marcus had come home from work stressed about a project deadline and barely spoke to me all evening. I'd asked what was wrong, but he just said he needed space. Apparently, he'd gone straight to Emma afterward. I kept scrolling. Marcus, September 22nd, 3:15 p.m. She got upset again about me working late. I don't know how to make her understand that this job is important to me. Emma, September 22nd, 3:18 p.m. Have you tried explaining your career goals to her? Maybe she just doesn't understand the finance world. Marcus, September 22nd, 3:22 p.m. I've tried. She just changes the subject or makes it about how we don't spend enough time together. That conversation never happened. I'd never made his career about us not spending time together. In fact, I'd been encouraging about his recent promotion, had even bought him a bottle of expensive whiskey to celebrate. But here was Emma, agreeing with a completely fictional version of me. The worst part was how reasonable she sounded in every message. Never directly badmouthing me, never obviously stirring up trouble. Just validating every doubt, amplifying every concern, subtly suggesting that maybe his relationship problems weren't actually his fault. Emma, October 1st, 7:41 p.m. I hate seeing you so stressed about this. You deserve to be with someone who supports your dreams. Marcus, October 1st, 7:58 p.m. She does support me. I think. It's just complicated. Emma, October 1st, 8:03 p.m. Relationships shouldn't be complicated, Marcus. They should make your life better, not harder. Jesus, Emma. I looked up at her. She was perched on the edge of her couch, watching my face like she was trying to gauge how much trouble she was in. This is so much worse than I thought. I was helping him work through his feelings. You were creating his feelings. I held up the phone, scrolling through more messages. Look at this. October 8th, you asked him if I'd seemed jealous of his female coworkers. He said no, he'd never noticed that. Then 3 messages later, you're talking about how jealousy can be subtle, how it shows up in little comments and questions. That's not. October 12th, you brought up how I used to be more spontaneous when we first started dating. Marcus agreed, said he missed that. Then you spent 6 messages analyzing how people change in relationships, how sometimes they become more controlling without realizing it. I kept scrolling, my anger building with every exchange. October 15th, you asked if he felt like he could be himself around me. October 19th, you wondered if he'd noticed me checking his phone. Sarah, I was just. I have never checked Marcus's phone, Emma. Not once. But now he thinks I have, because you planted the idea in his head so carefully that he probably false remembered it happening. The phone slipped in my sweaty hands. There were hundreds more messages, months of careful psychological manipulation disguised as friendly concern. Emma hadn't just been sabotaging my relationship, she'd been systematically rewriting Marcus's entire perception of me, one text at a time. How long were you planning to keep this up? I asked. Emma was crying now, real tears that made her mascara run in dark streaks down her cheeks. I thought eventually he'd realize on his own that you weren't right for each other. I thought I was just helping him see what was already there. By lying to him about me for months. I never lied. Emma. I scrolled to a message from last week. October 28th. You told Marcus that I'd complained about him leaving dishes in the sink, and that I'd said he was becoming like every other lazy guy. I have never said those words in my entire life. She was quiet. November 2nd. You told him I'd rolled my eyes when you mentioned his promotion at work. Emma, I threw him a party. I invited 12 people to Maggiano's and paid for dinner myself. Still quiet. November 5th. You said I'd asked you if you thought Marcus was settling for me. My voice cracked. Why would you tell him something like that? Even if I had said it, which I didn't, why would you hurt him like that? Emma looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Because I needed him to start questioning whether you really loved him. I do love him, I whispered, and for the first time since this nightmare started, my voice broke completely. Emma, I love him so much it scares me sometimes. How could you not see that? She wiped her nose with her sleeve, leaving a dark smudge of mascara across the pale fabric. I saw it. That's what made it so much worse. I stared at her, trying to understand. What do you mean? You got everything so easily, Sarah. The job at Henderson after one interview when I'd been trying to get into marketing for 2 years. The cute apartment in Riverside that you somehow afforded on your salary. The perfect relationship with the guy who was supposed to go out with me first. Her voice was getting steadier, more bitter. And you didn't even have to try. Marcus fell in love with a version of you that you barely had to think about being. That doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense. Emma stood up abruptly, pacing back to the kitchen window. Do you know what I had to do to get Marcus to trust me enough to confide in me? I had to study him, Sarah. I had to memorize his favorite movies and learn about cryptocurrency and pretend to care about his stupid fantasy football league. I had to become the perfect friend, the ideal confidant. I looked down at the phone still clutched in my hands, scrolling through their messages with new eyes. She was right, Emma referenced things I'd never even heard Marcus mention. Inside jokes about his coworkers, opinions about restaurants I'd never been to, detailed conversations about his childhood that he'd never shared with me in 2 years together. While you were just being yourself, Emma continued, and somehow that was enough for everyone. Your boss loves you even though you show up in jeans half the time. Your parents think you're perfect even though you forgot your dad's birthday last year. And Marcus loved you even though you never really tried to understand him the way I did. Emma, understanding someone isn't supposed to be manipulation. Isn't it though? She turned around, and there was something wild in her eyes now, something that made me take a step backward. How is what I did any different from you wearing that blue dress on your first date because you knew it was his favorite color? How is it different from you pretending to like hiking even though you complained about it to me every single weekend? Because I wasn't trying to destroy your relationship with someone else. No, you were just destroying my chance at having one at all. The accusation hung in the air between us. Outside Emma's window, I could hear normal people living their normal lives, car doors slamming, someone calling their dog, a lawnmower starting up in the distance. The world was continuing like nothing had changed, while mine crumbled in a converted warehouse loft that smelled like vanilla candles and betrayal. Emma, I need you to be honest with me about something, I said finally. I think I've been honest enough for one day. Are you in love with Marcus? She froze. For a moment, I thought she might lie again, might try to spin this as concern for my well-being or some twisted version of friendship. But then her shoulders sagged, and she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Yes, she whispered. I'd been in love with him since that first conversation on Bumble. Since before I ever saw his face. The admission should have made me angrier, but instead I felt something like relief. At least now I knew what I was really dealing with. What happens now? I asked. Emma looked at me with something that might have been hope. Now you know the truth. About him, about me, about everything. What are you going to do with it? I realized she thought this was some kind of negotiation. Like we could work out a deal, find a compromise that let her keep some piece of what she'd stolen from me. She had no idea what I was actually planning. I looked at Emma sitting there with mascara streaks down her face, waiting for my response like we were negotiating the terms of a business deal instead of discussing how she'd systematically destroyed my life for 2 years. Something cold and calculating settled in my chest, a feeling I'd never experienced before but recognized immediately as dangerous. I'm going to tell Marcus everything, I said, watching her face crumble. I'm going to play him the voicemail and show him these texts. Sarah, please. But not tonight. I stood up, tucking my phone back into my purse. Maybe not even this week. Emma's expression shifted from panic to confusion. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to think about this. Really think about what I want to happen next. I moved toward her door, then paused with my hand on the knob. In the meantime, I want you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing. I don't understand. Keep texting Marcus. Keep being his supportive friend. Keep validating all his concerns about me. I turned around to face her fully. And Emma? I want you to tell me about every conversation you have with him. Like you always have. The confusion on her face was almost comical. Why would you want that? Because now that I know what you're doing, I can help you do it better. I left her apartment with Emma calling my name behind me, but I didn't stop to explain. Let her wonder. Let her spend the next few days trying to figure out what I meant, what I was planning. The truth was, I was improvising. But as I drove back to my apartment on Riverside Drive, the one Emma thought I'd gotten so easily, even though I'd worked 2 jobs for 6 months to afford the deposit, a plan started forming in my mind. Emma had spent 2 years carefully crafting lies about me, turning my boyfriend against me with surgical precision. She'd studied Marcus like a research subject, learning his weaknesses and exploiting them. She'd made herself indispensable to him while making me seem impossible to live with. But Emma had made one crucial mistake. She'd shown me exactly how it was done. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Hey babe, running late tonight. Probably won't be over until after 9. Before this morning, that message would have sent me spiraling. I would have wondered where he really was, who he was really with, why he kept finding excuses to avoid spending time with me. I would have probably called Emma to analyze every word choice, and she would have fed my insecurities while secretly feeling victorious. Now I saw it for what it was. Marcus was probably going to Emma's apartment to talk about his relationship problems. Problems that Emma had created and was now helping him solve by suggesting he needed space from his controlling girlfriend. I texted back, no problem. Take all the time you need, 2 hearts. Then I immediately called Emma. Sarah? She answered on the first ring, her voice cautious. I thought you were angry. I am angry, I said, settling onto my couch with a cup of coffee. But I'm also tired, Emma. I'm tired of fighting for a relationship that maybe isn't worth fighting for. What do you mean? I could hear the barely contained excitement in her voice. Marcus just canceled our plans again. Third time in 2 weeks. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I have been too clingy, too demanding. Maybe I am the problem. Sarah. Emma's tone was perfectly calibrated, sympathetic but not too eager. She was good at this. You're not the problem. You're trying to force something that might not be working. Exactly. I took a sip of coffee and smiled. I think I need to start being honest with myself about what's really happening here. And Emma? I'm going to need my best friend to help me through this. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for exactly 7 seconds. Of course, Emma said finally. You know I'm always here for you. Good, I said. Because I have so much to tell you. Over the next 3 days, I became a student of my own destruction. I called Emma every evening at exactly 7:30 p.m., right after Marcus would have texted me about working late or needing space or having drinks with his coworkers. I fed her carefully crafted stories about my deteriorating mental state, each one designed to make her salivate with anticipation. I screamed at Marcus last night, I told her on Thursday, stirring pasta sauce while she listened with rapt attention. Like, really screamed. Over something stupid, he left his coffee mug on my nightstand instead of taking it to the kitchen. I don't know what's wrong with me, Emma. I'm becoming this person I don't recognize. Oh honey, Emma cooed, and I could practically hear her typing notes to relay to Marcus later. That doesn't sound like you at all. Are you feeling stressed about work? Sometimes anxiety can come out as anger. Maybe, I said, adding just the right amount of uncertainty to my voice. Or maybe Marcus is right about me being controlling. I've been thinking about what you said, about how I used to be more spontaneous. I looked through our old photos, and God, Emma, I really have changed. What I'd actually done was spent 20 minutes on Wednesday night taking selfies with fake tear streaks made from clear lip gloss, then deleted them immediately. But Emma didn't need to know that. Change isn't always bad. This is bad though, I interrupted. Yesterday I went through his jacket pockets while he was in the shower. I've never done anything like that before in my life, but I had this overwhelming need to know what he was hiding from me. That part was completely fabricated. Marcus had been at his own apartment Wednesday night, and I'd spent the evening researching psychological manipulation tactics on Reddit and taking detailed notes in a composition book I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Did you find anything? Emma asked, and the hunger in her voice was unmistakable. Just receipts and his chapstick. But Emma, the fact that I looked at all, what kind of girlfriend does that make me? It makes you human, she said, but I could tell she was already composing the text she'd send Marcus about his girlfriend's invasion of privacy. You're just scared of losing him. I am scared, I admitted, and that part was actually true. But maybe I'm scared of the wrong thing. Maybe I should be scared of who I'm becoming instead of scared of him leaving me. Friday night, I escalated. I think I'm having a breakdown, Emma, I whispered into the phone at 11:43 p.m., sitting in my dark bedroom with my laptop open to a Wikipedia article about relationship anxiety. Like, an actual mental breakdown. I spent 4 hours today writing Marcus a letter about all the ways I think he's pulling away from me, then I drove to his apartment to slip it under his door. Oh no, Sarah. Did you? I sat in the parking garage for 2 hours with that letter, crying so hard I couldn't see straight. Then I came home and burned it in my kitchen sink. I paused for dramatic effect. The smoke alarm went off. Mrs. Patterson from 3B knocked on my door to check if I was okay. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle in a way that made my skin crawl. Sarah, honey, I think you might need to talk to someone. Like, a professional someone. You think I'm crazy? I think you're hurting in ways that maybe a therapist could help with better than I can. Perfect. I knew Emma would suggest therapy. It was the ideal way to pathologize my behavior, make Marcus think his girlfriend was mentally unstable instead of just responding normally to months of gaslighting. Maybe you're right, I said. God, Emma, what if I really am losing it? What if everything Marcus has been trying to tell me about my behavior is true? What has he been trying to tell you? I almost smiled. Emma couldn't resist fishing for information, even when she already knew the answers because she'd fed them to him in the first place. Just that I've been different. More suspicious, more needy. He said last week that he feels like he's walking on eggshells around me, like anything he does might set me off. I let my voice crack slightly. What if he's right? What if I'm the problem and I can't even see it? Oh, sweetie, Emma murmured, and I knew she was already planning how to use this conversation as evidence of my deteriorating mental state. What Emma didn't know was that Marcus hadn't said any of those things to me. But according to her text history with him, those were the exact words she'd been putting in his mouth for weeks, coaching him to see me as unstable and unpredictable. By Saturday morning, I was ready for phase 2 of my plan. I called Marcus directly for the first time in 4 days. Sarah? His voice was cautious, like I might explode at any second. How are you feeling? Perfect. Emma had already been feeding him reports of my breakdown. I'm okay, I said, injecting just enough tremor into my voice to sound fragile. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Can you come over tonight? Around 8? Of course. Is everything all right? I think I need to be honest with you about some things. About how I've been acting lately. I paused, letting him fill the silence with his own assumptions. Emma helped me realize I haven't been fair to you. The relief in Marcus's voice was audible. I'm glad you talked to her. She's really worried about you. I bet she was. After I hung up, I spent the afternoon staging my apartment like a movie set. I moved my self-help books from the bedroom to the coffee table, the ones I bought yesterday at Barnes & Noble specifically for this performance. Attached by Amir Levine. Why Does He Do That? By Lundy Bancroft. The Anxiety and Worry Workbook by David Clark. Books that would suggest I was desperately trying to fix myself, that I recognized I was the problem in our relationship. I printed out articles about relationship anxiety and left them scattered on my kitchen counter, highlighted with neon yellow marker. I wrote myself a fake therapist appointment in my calendar for next Wednesday at 2 p.m. with Dr. Martinez and left the planner open next to my purse. At 7:45 p.m., I texted Emma, Marcus is coming over in 15 minutes. I'm going to tell him everything, about checking his pockets, about the letter I almost left him, about how I've been obsessing over every text. I can't live with this guilt anymore. Emma responded immediately, are you sure that's a good idea? Maybe start small? No, I need to be completely honest. It's the only way we can move forward. I'm going to tell him about reading his Instagram DMs too. I hadn't read his Instagram DMs. I'd never even thought about reading his Instagram DMs. But Emma didn't know that. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Sarah, wait, Emma said, breathing hard like she'd been running. Don't tell him about the Instagram thing. Why not? I thought you said honesty was important. It is, but some truths are harder to come back from than others. Maybe focus on the emotional stuff first, how you've been feeling insecure, how you know you've been clingy. Leave out the specific actions you took. Translation, don't give Marcus concrete reasons to break up with you before I finished positioning myself as his alternative. But Emma, I went through his DMs with other girls. I screenshotted conversations he had with his ex-girlfriend from college. I even looked up her LinkedIn profile and spent an hour scrolling through her photos. My voice was getting more frantic, more unhinged. How can I not tell him that? You screenshotted his private conversations? Emma's shock sounded genuine. 12 of them. I have them saved in a folder on my phone labeled evidence. I started fake crying, making my voice thick and shaky. Emma, I think I might actually be crazy. Normal people don't do this stuff, right? Normal girlfriends don't create evidence folders about their boyfriend's ex-girlfriends? The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Sarah, you need to delete those screenshots right now. Before Marcus gets there. But what if I need them later? What if he lies about talking to her? He's not lying to you. How do you know? I snapped, letting real anger seep into my voice. How do you know he's not lying? Maybe I'm not paranoid, Emma. Maybe I'm finally seeing things clearly. Because I know Marcus, and he wouldn't. Right. You know my boyfriend better than I do. Got it. I hung up before she could respond, smiling at my reflection in the black TV screen. Marcus knocked on my door at exactly 8:03 p.m. I opened the door to find Marcus holding a bouquet of daisies, my favorite flowers, though I'd never specifically told him that. Emma must have mentioned it during one of their lengthy heart-to-hearts about my deteriorating mental state. Hey, he said softly, studying my face like he was looking for signs of the unhinged woman Emma had been describing. How are you holding up? I'd spent 20 minutes perfecting my appearance, just enough concealer to look tired but not sick, hair in a messy bun that suggested I'd been too distraught to care about styling it, one of his old college t-shirts to remind him of better times between us. I'm okay, I said, accepting the flowers with appropriately shaky hands. Thank you for coming. I know I've been difficult lately. Marcus settled onto my couch, careful to leave space between us. 3 months ago, he would have pulled me against his side immediately. Now he sat like he was visiting a volatile relative in a psychiatric ward. Emma said you wanted to talk about some things, he said carefully. Of course she had. I wondered how many texts they'd exchanged in the 37 minutes between my dramatic phone call and his arrival. Emma was probably sitting in her apartment right now, refreshing their conversation thread and waiting for updates about my confession. I've been doing some research, I began, gesturing toward the carefully arranged self-help books on my coffee table. About anxiety, about attachment styles, about why I've been acting so. I trailed off, letting him fill in the blank. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I pulled out my phone, opening the notes app where I'd spent 2 hours crafting fake confessions. I made a list of things I need to apologize for. Emma helped me see how unfair I've been to you. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes scanning the highlighted articles spread across my kitchen counter. What kind of list? I went through your jacket pockets on Wednesday, I said, reading from my fabricated script. I was looking for. I don't even know what I was looking for. Evidence that you were hiding something from me, I guess. His face went pale. Sarah. And I know you've noticed me asking weird questions lately. About your female coworkers, about why you work late so much. I've been suspicious of everything, and that's not fair to you. I looked up from my phone, letting my eyes well with real tears, not from guilt, but from the exhaustion of performing this elaborate charade. Emma made me realize that this is about my own insecurity, not about anything you've actually done wrong. Emma's been really worried about you, Marcus said quietly. She's a good friend. Better than I deserve, honestly. She's been so patient, letting me vent about our relationship for hours. I paused, watching his reaction. I probably told her things I should have been discussing with you instead. Marcus nodded slowly. She mentioned that you've been struggling with some trust issues. Perfect. Emma had been laying the groundwork for this conversation, priming Marcus to see me as the architect of my own relationship problems. There's more, I continued, returning to my fake confession notes. I looked at your Instagram DMs last week. I know your password, I watched you type it in at my apartment, and I went through your conversations with other people. The color drained from Marcus's face completely. What did you find? It was such an interesting question. Not why would you violate my privacy, or how could you do that to me? Just, what did you find? Like he was genuinely worried about what I might have discovered. Nothing, I said quickly. Just normal conversations with friends, some work stuff with colleagues. But Marcus, the fact that I looked at all. I let my voice crack convincingly. What kind of person does that make me? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the self-help books scattered across my table. Emma thinks I should talk to someone professional, I continued. A therapist. She says what I'm experiencing isn't normal relationship anxiety. That might be a good idea, Marcus said carefully. Do you think I'm crazy? The question came out smaller than I'd intended, and for a split second, it felt real. Maybe because part of me genuinely wanted to know what Marcus thought about the woman Emma had convinced him I was. I think you're hurting, he said finally. And I think maybe we both need to figure out how to move forward from here. My phone buzzed against the coffee table. A text from Emma, how did it go? Is he being understanding? I let Marcus see the notification, watched his eyes flick toward Emma's name on my screen. She's been checking on me all day, I said. I'm lucky to have a friend who cares this much. Marcus nodded, but something flickered across his face, an expression I couldn't quite read. What happens now? I asked, genuinely curious about his answer. He was quiet for so long that I started to wonder if my performance had been too convincing, if I'd accidentally pushed him past the point where Emma's plan required him to be. Finally, he looked at me with something that might have been sadness. I think we both need some time to think about what we really want, he said. It was exactly what Emma had been coaching him toward for months. But hearing him say it, seeing how easily he'd accepted her version of reality, made something harden inside my chest. You're probably right, I said softly. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. This time, I was ready to give her exactly what she'd been waiting for. I waited until Marcus left, which took another excruciating hour of him being carefully supportive while maintaining emotional distance, before I called Emma back. How did it go? She answered immediately, not even bothering with hello. Terrible, I said, letting exhaustion creep into my voice. He wants us to take a break. 2 weeks of no contact to figure out what we really want. The silence on Emma's end lasted exactly 4 seconds. I could practically hear her trying not to sound excited. Oh honey, I'm so sorry. How are you feeling about that? Like my world is ending, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Watching Marcus accept Emma's manufactured version of me so completely had been more devastating than I'd expected. Emma, what if this break turns permanent? What if he realizes he's happier without me? If that happens, then maybe. Maybe what? I cut her off, adding an edge to my voice. Maybe it means you weren't as compatible as you thought. I know that's hard to hear, but sometimes these things happen for a reason. I closed my eyes, remembering the Emma who used to stay up until 2 a.m. helping me write cover letters for jobs I really wanted. The Emma who drove me to the emergency room last spring when I thought I was having a heart attack but it turned out to be an anxiety attack from too much caffeine. The Emma who cried with me when my grandmother died, who helped me pick out the perfect black dress for the funeral. That Emma had never existed. She'd been a performance, just like everything else. I keep thinking about what you said, I continued. About how I've changed since Marcus and I got together. Maybe this break is a chance for me to figure out who I really am when I'm not obsessing over a relationship. That sounds healthy, Emma said, and I could hear her settling in for what she expected to be a long conversation about my emotional growth and self-discovery. I've been thinking about dating other people, I said casually, like I was mentioning the weather. The silence stretched so long I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. What? Emma's voice was strangled. During this break. Marcus didn't say we had to be exclusive during these 2 weeks, and honestly, maybe I need to remember what it's like to be with someone who doesn't make me feel crazy all the time. Sarah, that seems really impulsive. Don't you think you should focus on working on yourself instead of jumping into something new? I'm not jumping into anything serious. Just casual dates. There's this guy from my yoga class, David Chin, who asked me out 3 weeks ago. I said no because of Marcus, but maybe I should text him back. Emma made a sound like she was choking. Chen? Is he related to Marcus? Yeah, David mentioned they're cousins. Isn't that funny? Small world. I paused, letting that sink in. David's actually really sweet. He's a pediatric nurse at Mercy General, and he has this amazing laugh. Plus he's seen me in yoga pants at 7 a.m. and still wants to take me to dinner, so that's got to count for something. You cannot date Marcus's cousin while you're on a break with Marcus, Emma said, her voice rising to a pitch I'd never heard before. Why not? We're not together right now. Marcus made that very clear tonight. Because it's insane, Sarah. Because it would destroy any chance you have of working things out with him. Maybe I don't want to work things out. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, carrying more truth than the rest of this conversation combined. Maybe this break is exactly what I needed to realize that being with Marcus has been making me miserable for months. Emma was breathing hard, like she'd been running sprints. You don't mean that. Don't I? When's the last time Marcus made me genuinely happy, Emma? When's the last time I talked to you about something good in our relationship instead of just complaining about how distant and weird he's been? I could hear her scrambling, trying to figure out how to respond. Her entire plan had been built on the assumption that I'd spend this break pining for Marcus while she positioned herself as his emotional support system. The idea that I might actually move on, especially with his cousin, was threatening everything she'd worked for. Sarah, you're not thinking clearly right now. You're hurt and confused, and making decisions out of spite isn't. It's not spite, I interrupted. It's clarity. For the first time in months, I can see my relationship objectively, and you know what I see? 2 years with someone who makes me doubt my own sanity on a weekly basis. That's not Marcus's fault. Isn't it though? I let some real anger bleed through. He's the one who started questioning everything I do. He's the one who made me feel like I was being controlling for asking normal girlfriend questions. He's the one who's been pulling away and making me feel like I have to beg for his attention. Emma was quiet again, probably calculating her next move. I'm texting David tonight, I announced. We're going out Friday. Maybe Saturday too if Friday goes well. Please don't do this, Emma whispered. Do what? Go on dates while I'm single? Emma, whose side are you on here? It was a trap, and we both knew it. But I needed to hear how she'd answer. Yours, obviously. I'm always on your side. I just think you're moving too fast, making decisions you'll regret when your emotions aren't so raw. My emotions aren't raw, Emma. They're clear. Maybe for the first time in our entire friendship. I hung up before she could respond, then immediately blocked her number. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I was finally ready to burn everything down. I didn't actually block Emma's number. But I did turn my phone off and spend Sunday morning crafting the most elaborate lie of my life. At 9:23 a.m., I sent David Chin, who was indeed Marcus's cousin and did indeed go to my yoga class, a carefully worded text asking if his dinner invitation from 3 weeks ago was still open. David, being a genuinely nice person who had no idea he was about to become a pawn in psychological warfare, responded within an hour with restaurant suggestions and his work schedule. We made plans for Tuesday at 7 p.m. Rosario's Italian, the same restaurant where Marcus and I had our first official date. Then I turned my phone back on and waited. The first text from Emma arrived at 1:47 p.m. Sarah, I'm sorry about last night. Can we please talk? The second came at 3:22 p.m. I know you're angry with me, but blocking me isn't going to solve anything. By 6 p.m., she'd sent 14 messages ranging from apologetic to frustrated to genuinely panicked. But the one that made me smile was timestamped 4:55 p.m. Marcus texted me asking if I'd heard from you. I told him you needed space but that I was worried about your mental state. He's considering cutting the break short. Perfect. Emma was so terrified of losing control of the narrative that she was making tactical errors, pushing Marcus toward me instead of away. Monday morning, I showed up to work at Henderson and Associates looking better than I had in months. New haircut, the burgundy dress that made my eyes look bigger, actual effort put into my makeup. My coworker Jessica noticed immediately. You look amazing, she said, stopping by my desk with her usual 10 a.m. coffee. Hot date this weekend? Something like that, I said, pulling up the Henderson Industries account on my computer. Actually, can I ask you something? That guy from your Thursday night book club, the teacher? Is he still single? Jessica's eyebrows shot up. Ryan? Yeah, why? What happened to Marcus? We're taking a break. Testing the waters elsewhere. Good for you, Jessica said, settling into the chair beside my desk. Honestly? I never thought he was right for you anyway. 2. I don't know, wishy-washy? Like he was always waiting for permission to have opinions. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? Just, whenever you guys would come to happy hour, he'd always check with you before ordering drinks or agreeing to plans. But not in a sweet, considerate way, more like he was afraid of making the wrong choice. Jessica shrugged. Ryan's the complete opposite. Confident, makes decisions, actually has personality. I stared at her, processing this outside perspective on my relationship. You never mentioned thinking Marcus was wishy-washy. Because you seemed happy. And honestly, some of your other friends made him sound way worse. What other friends? Jessica looked uncomfortable. Emma, mainly. She was always going on about how controlling you've gotten, how Marcus was walking on eggshells. I figured if your best friend was saying that stuff, maybe Marcus really was just being careful around you. The room started spinning. Emma talked to you about my relationship? A few times, yeah. Usually when you weren't around, like at Sarah Miller's birthday party in September, or that group dinner at Chang's last month. Jessica was looking increasingly concerned. Sarah, are you okay? You look pale. I gripped my desk chair. What exactly did Emma say? Just, that you'd been really insecure lately, asking her to analyze every text Marcus sent you. She was worried because apparently you'd started going through his stuff. She made it sound like maybe you needed professional help. Emma hadn't just been manipulating Marcus and me. She'd been seeding doubts about my mental stability with my entire social circle, creating a network of people who'd view any future revelations about her behavior through the lens of Sarah's having a breakdown. I have to go, I said, grabbing my purse and leaving Jessica sitting in my cubicle looking confused. I drove straight to Marcus's office building downtown, parking in the visitor garage and taking the elevator to the 14th floor where his financial consulting firm occupied half the building. I'd only been there twice before, once for his company Christmas party, once to bring him lunch when he was working on a huge deadline. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, recognized me immediately. Sarah. How nice to see you. Are you here to surprise Marcus? Something like that, I said. Is he free for lunch? He just got back from a client meeting. Let me buzz him. While she called back to Marcus's office, I studied the framed photos lining the reception area walls. Company retreats, award ceremonies, group shots of employees at various social events. My eyes landed on one from what looked like a recent happy hour, and my blood turned to ice. Emma was in the photo. Standing next to Marcus with her hand on his arm, both of them laughing at something off camera. When was this taken? I asked the receptionist after she'd hung up with Marcus. Oh, that's from our October mixer. We encouraged everyone to bring friends, helps with networking, you know. Your friend Emma is lovely, by the way. She and Marcus seemed to really hit it off with the Peterson Industries team. Emma had been to Marcus's office. Not just once, but recently enough that the receptionist remembered her name and their interaction. While I'd been at home wondering why Marcus seemed so distant after work events, Emma had been there beside him, charming his colleagues and cementing her place in his professional life too. Sarah? Marcus appeared in the lobby, looking surprised and slightly wary. What are you doing here? I needed to see you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Can we talk privately? Marcus glanced at the receptionist, who was pretending to be busy with paperwork but obviously listening. Sure. Let's go to the conference room. He led me down a hallway lined with glass offices, past coworkers who looked up curiously as we passed. I wondered how many of them had met Emma at that October mixer, how many had heard her version of Marcus's relationship problems. The conference room was sterile and corporate, with a long table and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, maintaining distance between us. How are you feeling? He asked carefully, like he was talking to someone on a ledge. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. He nodded, but his body language screamed reluctance. How long has Emma been coming to your work events? The question clearly wasn't what he'd expected. What do you mean? The October mixer. The receptionist said Emma was here, that you two hit it off with some client team. How long has that been happening? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. She's come to a few things. As your friend, initially, but then. He trailed off. But then what? Then as my friend too, I guess. Sarah, where is this going? I pulled out my phone, opening the recording app I downloaded that morning. I'm going to play you something. And after you hear it, I need you to tell me if you still think I'm the one who's been acting crazy in this relationship. I pressed play on the voicemail, watching Marcus's face as Emma's voice filled the sterile conference room. Jen, oh my god, it's actually working. The plan is working better than we thought. Marcus went completely still, his eyes locked on my phone like it was a venomous snake. Marcus came over again tonight. Third time this week. He's so confused about Sarah's behavior, and I just keep validating his concerns, you know? The color drained from his face in real time. I watched 2 years of carefully constructed lies crumble as Emma's gleeful voice detailed exactly how she'd manipulated both of us. He actually said, and I quote, "I don't know if Sarah is the person I thought she was." Can you believe it? 2 years together and he's doubting everything because of a few conversations with me. Marcus sank into one of the leather conference chairs, his head in his hands. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Men are so easy to manipulate when you just listen to them and agree with everything they say." I paused the recording. There's more, but I think you get the idea. The silence stretched between us for 43 seconds. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see normal people going about their Monday afternoon, walking to lunch meetings, talking on phones, living their uncomplicated lives where their best friends weren't sociopaths. Marcus looked up at me with devastated eyes. "I'm so sorry." I believed every word she said. "She also showed me her text messages with you," I continued, my voice eerily calm. "Months of conversations where she fed you lies about me, convinced you I was checking your phone and complaining about your career and rolling my eyes at your promotion." Marcus made a sound like he was being physically hurt. "None of that was true." "I know that. You know that. But Emma knew exactly how to make you believe it was true." I sat down across from him, the long conference table between us feeling like a chasm. "She studied you, Marcus. Learned your insecurities and exploited them. She made herself indispensable to you while making me seem impossible to live with." "The October mixer," Marcus said suddenly, his voice hollow. "She asked so many questions about my coworkers, about office politics. I thought she was just being friendly, trying to understand my world better than." He stopped himself. "Better than I did?" He nodded miserably. "She remembered everyone's names after meeting them once. She asked about the Peterson Industries deal, new details about projects I barely mentioned. It made me feel like finally someone cared about my professional life. While I was at home wondering why you seemed so distant after work events." "Because I felt guilty," Marcus admitted. "Guilty that Emma seemed more interested in my career than my own girlfriend did. Guilty that I looked forward to talking to her about work stuff because she actually understood what I was dealing with. I felt something twist in my chest, not jealousy, but a deeper hurt." "Marcus, did you ever actually try to talk to me about work? Or did you just assume I wouldn't be interested?" He was quiet for a long moment. I honestly can't remember anymore. Emma kept saying you seemed bored when I brought up office stuff, that you always changed the subject. After a while, I stopped trying. I never changed the subject. I asked follow-up questions about your projects. I celebrated when you got promoted. I bought you that expensive whiskey to commemorate the Peterson deal." "You did," he whispered. "God, Sarah, what have I done?" My phone buzzed against the conference table. A text from an unknown number. "I know you're with Marcus right now. Before you destroy everything, ask him about what happened at Jenny Morrison's birthday party in September. Ask him about the kiss." I stared at the message, my blood turning to ice. Emma had gotten a new number. "Marcus," I said slowly, "who is Jenny Morrison?" His face went white as paper. She works in our accounting department." "Sarah, I can explain. September birthday party. Emma was there." "What happened?" Marcus looked like he might vomit. It didn't mean anything. Emma and I were talking outside. She was upset about some guy who'd ghosted her, and she kissed me. It lasted maybe 3 seconds before I pulled away. The conference room started spinning. "You kissed Emma." "She kissed me. And I immediately told her it was a mistake, that I loved you, that it could never happen again." Marcus was talking faster now, desperate. "She apologized, said she was drunk and emotional and that it would never happen again. She begged me not to tell you because it would ruin your friendship for no reason. So you decided to lie to me for 2 months instead. I decided not to hurt you over something that meant nothing." Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing to the windows. "Sarah, it was 3 seconds of my life that I've regretted every day since." Emma made it clear she understood it was a mistake. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma's new number. "Funny how he forgot to mention that he called me crying at 2 a.m. last Tuesday, saying he was thinking about leaving you for someone who actually understood him. But sure, let's pretend this is all my fault." I showed Marcus the message. His face crumpled. "Is that true?" I asked. "I called her because I was confused and upset and I thought she was the only person who would understand." He stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Oh God. She planned this whole thing, didn't she? She knew exactly what to say to make me doubt everything." "Marcus, did you tell Emma you were thinking about leaving me for someone else?" The silence was answer enough. "Not for someone else," Marcus said quietly, still staring out the conference room windows. "For someone who wouldn't make me feel like I was constantly failing as a boyfriend." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the conference table, feeling the expensive wood grain under my fingertips, trying to anchor myself to something solid while my world continued its free fall. "Someone like Emma," I said. Marcus turned around, and I saw something I'd never seen in his face before, genuine shame mixed with a dawning horror as he realized how completely he'd been manipulated. "Sarah, she made it seem like you were telling her things about me. Personal things. She said you complained that I was boring in bed, that I was too predictable, that you missed the excitement of dating other people." His voice cracked. "She knew details about our sex life that I'd never told anyone. I thought you must have shared them with her." My hands started shaking. "I never said any of those things to Emma. Ever." "I know that now," Marcus whispered. "But at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when I'd spent the whole evening watching you seem uncomfortable around me, when every conversation felt strained and you kept giving me these looks like I was disappointing you." He ran his hands through his hair. "Emma called it emotional unavailability. She had a name for everything I was feeling." "What looks, Marcus? What conversations felt strained?" He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. "Like last Tuesday night," he finally said. "You kept checking your phone during dinner, and when I asked if everything was okay, you said you were just tired from work. But then you barely talked for the rest of the evening. Emma said that was classic passive-aggressive behavior, that you were probably upset about something but making me guess what it was instead of just communicating directly. I stared at him. Marcus, I was checking my phone because my mom was in the emergency room. She'd fallen at work and they were running tests to make sure she hadn't broken her hip. I told you I was tired because I didn't want to worry you with something that might turn out to be nothing. The color drained from his face. Your mom was in the hospital? She's fine. Bruised ribs, nothing serious. But I spent that entire Tuesday afternoon terrified and trying not to panic. My voice was getting steadier, colder. And instead of asking me what was really wrong, you decided to call Emma at 2 a.m. and complain about my emotional unavailability. Marcus sank back into his chair like all the air had been knocked out of him. She knew exactly what to say. Every doubt I brought to her, she had an explanation that made it seem like you were the problem. She even had articles. She'd text me links to relationship advice blogs about dealing with controlling partners. My phone buzzed again. Emma, ask him about the lunch date we have scheduled for Thursday. Ask him what he was planning to tell you after we talked things through in person. I showed Marcus the message. He went gray. You have a lunch date with Emma on Thursday? He said quickly. We were supposed to meet at Cafe Luna at noon. She said she wanted to help me figure out how to approach our relationship conversation after the break ended. She said she had some insights about what you really needed from me. What kind of insights? Marcus looked like he might be sick. She said you'd confided in her that you were thinking about dating other people during the break. That you'd mentioned being curious about what else was out there. She offered to help me plan some kind of grand gesture to win you back before you made any decisions you'd regret. The manipulation was so layered, so perfectly orchestrated, that I almost had to admire Emma's skill. She'd been playing both sides, feeding me information to make me distrust Marcus while simultaneously positioning herself as his relationship savior. Marcus, I said slowly, I need you to call Emma right now. Tell her you want to move the Thursday lunch to tonight. Tell her it's urgent, that our conversation today made you realize you're ready to make a decision about us. He looked confused. What kind of decision? I smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt genuine. The kind that's going to end this game once and for all. Marcus called Emma at 3:47 p.m. from his office phone while I sat across from him, watching his face as he delivered the performance of his life. Emma? It's me. I know we were supposed to meet Thursday, but I need to see you tonight. Something happened with Sarah today that changed everything. His voice carried just the right amount of urgency, desperation even. Can you meet me at Rosario's at 8? I need your advice about what to do next. I could hear Emma's excited voice through the phone, though I couldn't make out the words. Marcus's eyes met mine as he nodded along to whatever she was saying. Yeah, I think you're right. About everything. I'll see you tonight. He hung up and looked at me with something between amazement and disgust. She sounded thrilled, Sarah. Actually thrilled that our relationship might be over. At 7:45 p.m., I was sitting in my Honda Civic across the street from Rosario's, watching through the restaurant's large front windows as Emma arrived early and requested what appeared to be a romantic corner table for two. She was wearing the black dress she'd bought for her sister's wedding last year, the one that made her look stunning, and she knew it. Marcus had agreed to wear the wire I'd borrowed from my cousin Jake, who worked in private security. The recording quality wasn't perfect, but it would be good enough to capture whatever Emma said when she thought she'd finally won. My phone buzzed with Marcus's text, going in now. Are you sure about this? I texted back, positive. Remember, let her talk. She'll tell you everything if she thinks you're ready to choose her. Through the window, I watched Marcus approach the table where Emma was already seated. Even from across the street, I could see her face light up as he sat down. She leaned forward immediately, reaching across the table to touch his hand. 23 minutes later, Marcus emerged from the restaurant looking pale and shaken. He crossed the street to my car and got into the passenger seat without saying a word. Well? I asked. He pulled a small recording device from under his shirt with trembling hands. She confessed to everything, Sarah. Everything. The moment she thought I was ready to leave you for her, it all came pouring out. We drove back to my apartment and sat on my couch, the recorder between us on the coffee table like evidence in a murder trial. Emma's voice filled my living room, clear and unmistakable. I'd been waiting for this moment for 2 years, Marcus. Watching you waste your time with someone who never appreciated what she had. Then, I knew exactly what she was telling you about me because I was feeding her the information. Every doubt, every insecurity, I planted them and watched them grow. And finally, the confession that made my blood run cold, the best part was making her think she was losing her mind. Do you know how easy it is to gaslight someone when you're their closest friend? She trusted me completely, so when I told her she was being paranoid or clingy, she believed me. I convinced her that her own instincts were wrong. I stopped the recording. Marcus was staring at the device like it contained evidence of his own murder. She said she loved me, he whispered. She said she'd been in love with me since before we even met, and that everything she did was to save me from a relationship that was making me miserable. What did you tell her? Marcus looked at me with eyes full of shame and something that might have been hope. I told her I needed to go home and think about everything she'd said. But Sarah. He reached for my hands, and for the first time in months, his touch felt familiar. I don't need to think about anything. I know exactly who I want to be with. Marcus. She's blocked on everything. Phone, social media, email. I'm changing my number tomorrow. His voice was getting stronger, more certain. And I'm taking this recording to the police. What she did to us, the systematic manipulation, the lies, there has to be laws against that. I looked at this man I'd loved for 2 years, really looked at him, and realized that somewhere in the wreckage Emma had created, we might actually be able to find each other again. My phone rang. Emma's new number. I answered on speaker. You recorded me, she said, her voice flat with defeat. Every word, I replied. The line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. When Emma finally spoke again, her voice was small, broken. I really did love him, Sarah. I would have made him happier than you ever could. Maybe, I said. But that wasn't your choice to make. I hung up and blocked the number. The plan had worked better than I'd ever imagined.